Great. Good evening, folks. We are calling for a special meeting on November 16th at 6 p.m. for the Park and Recreation Commission. And I call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. sharp. Let's do a pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Thank you. Hello, Whitney. Can we do a roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Kumarapan?
Yes.
Vice Chair Stanek?
Here.
Commissioner Tombe?
Here.
Commissioner Shu?
Here.
And Commissioner Begor?
Yes.
Excellent. And the item number 1 is the approval of minutes. And this is for the meeting minutes of November 5th. And the recommended action is to review and approve it. Any comments from any of the commissioners on the minutes? Any amendment or? I'm hearing nod. No. No. Okay. Can I have a motion then, please?
I move to approve the minutes of November 5th.
Excellent. Thank you. Looking for a second.
Seconded.
Excellent. So Commissioner Carroll put in there, Nisha approved, seconded it. Okay, let's go for a voting, please. Whitney.
Chair Kumarapan?
Yes.
Vice Chair Stanek?
Yes.
Commissioner Tombe?
Yes.
Commissioner Shu?
Yes.
And Commissioner Begor?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Awesome. Thank you. Postponements. I don't think that we have, this is a special meeting. We don't have any postponements on it, right? Whitney?
Yeah,
Excellent.
correct. The postponed items will be on the December
Regular meeting. Okay, excellent. Thank you. And we have oral communications, and I'm looking at for any public in it. I don't see anyone in the attendees at this point. So then I think we can move on to written communications. Do we have any written communication on this particular topic?
No written communications were received.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, then let's go to the old business item number 2. This is the updated administrative procedures within the community funding grant policy. And I think I see the recommended action is to, maybe I'll read it out because this is one thing which we called out. So I want to say what the recommended action for everyone is: a review and to provide the feedback on updated administrative procedures within the community funding grant policy, including an earlier submission date for applications, clarifications on how applications will be organized and reviewed, eligibility requirements, program funding cap, and affirmation that all qualified applicant materials will be brought to City Council. So a long list of recommended actions. Let's see, we can go one by one, I believe. So let's kick off with the staff report. Thank Joanne. Director Joanne, I'll give it to you. And then I know you have folks coming there to present it.
Yeah, we have a few folks here from a couple of different departments that I will introduce. I just wanted to say thank you for your flexibility. I appreciate all of you being available to review this item and provide your feedback this evening. I think that this was one of the first experiences I had with the commission was this community funding grant for the fiscal year 2021. And so just got some feedback from our challenges that we faced. I think we'll continue to make improvements, but this is our first pass at making some improvements from some of the things that we had challenges with last time. And so wanted to have Rochelle Sander, who is our recreation supervisor, provide you with a brief PowerPoint presentation on the item. And then we have 2 members from the finance team, Tony Oaste Anderson and Zach Korach, here to help answer any questions or provide you any additional information that you may need. So I'm going to turn it over to Rochelle right now, and I am going to screen share.
Excellent.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Fabulous. All right, good evening, commissioners. My name is Rochelle Sander. I'm a recreation supervisor, and I'm here to give you an update on the community funding grant program policy. So the agenda tonight is background on the policy, the current procedure, recommended revisions, the fiscal impact, and our recommended action. The community funding grant policy was adopted in fiscal year 2012-2013 and recently updated to include a funding cap of $20,000 per applicant and a tiered funding structure in January of 2020. The current procedure has applications available February 1st and due March 1st. Submitted applications are reviewed by staff for completeness and then sent to the Parks and Recreation Commission for review and evaluation of qualified applicants. In June, City Council reviews the Commission's recommendations and determines the funding to approve, which is appropriated in the city's budget. The following fiscal year, grant recipients submit an annual project report describing how the funds were spent. Staff is recommending that the timeline be adjusted to applications being available early January and due February 1st. The timeline adjustment allows for Parks and Recreation Commission to review and evaluate eligible applications over the course of 2 meetings. The first meeting will be an opportunity for Commission to review the applications and ask any clarifying questions to the organizations. The second meeting will allow for commissioners to review their evaluations as a group and finalize recommendations for City Council. Staff is also recommending a funding cap of $70,000 based on a 5-year average of previously awarded community grant funds. The cap will be adjusted annually based on the consumer price index for all urban consumers. The funding cap just provides more of a big picture consideration during your evaluation process. During the budget process, City Council also approves festival fee waivers for community nonprofit organizations. Staff is recommending that these organizations will be able to apply for the community grant funding, however, not for the same festival that has already received a funding waiver. Organizations can apply for a different program or event. This revision ensures a more equal opportunity to fund other programs and events. After the first commission meeting, where questions will be clarified with the applicants, Parks and Recreation Commission will evaluate all eligible applications on their own merit, prioritize, and submit evaluations prior to the second meeting. Staff will average the commissioners' evaluation sheets and place them in the funding tiers accordingly. During the second meeting, Parks and Recreation Commission will review and finalize their recommendations for City Council. City Council will receive all eligible applications with recommendations from the Parks and Recreation Commission. To review, the fiscal impact will be determined by the funding cap, adjusted annually by the Consumer Price Index. For fiscal year 21-22, the funding cap will be set at $70,000. The recommended action is to review and provide feedback on updated administrative procedures within the community funding grant policy, including an earlier submission date for applications, clarification on how applications will be organized and reviewed, eligibility requirements, program funding cap, and affirmation that all qualified applicant materials will be brought to City Council. Thank you for your review of this item. Staff is available for any questions.
Great. Thank you, Rochelle. I appreciate it. So let's switch on to clarification questions. I think I would recommend our commissioners on this clarifying questions. Looks like there are specific recommended actions. So maybe you can ask your questions accordingly in that, right? One is on the earlier admission date for applications, and then whatever specifically you see the changes, I think we can go in that order. That'll be great, so that we can just to make it more efficient. Appreciate it. A lot of hands raised. I didn't see it who raised first, but I'm going with the order there on the top. I think Commissioner Nisha, you have.
Yeah,
first
just
one to
making,
go.
I just want to make sure that I'm going, do you want us to do it group and like group by group, or I just ask the questions in order of those things?
I would say like group by group. So if you have a questions on the
Oh,
dates,
okay. I don't have
that'll
any
be good.
questions on submission date.
Okay, and if then I'll go to Commissioner Sashi. You are on that. If
Yeah,
it is anything related to date. please.
Yeah, okay. So I do have a question. So obviously, you've moved the date up. Could you explain what was your thought process of why you moved the date up? Because oftentimes when you're doing something at a particular time in the year, various agencies that could potentially apply for this will follow whatever was the deadline before. So what was the need for moving it up?
So our main goal for moving the date was to give you the opportunity to have 2 meetings to look through all of the applications. Because our hope is that you have the opportunity to actually ask the organizations any questions you may have before you have to evaluate what they've given you.
Okay. Okay.
Can I elaborate on that just a little bit? So we didn't think that given the timeline of when we have to get the information to council, it just gave you more of an opportunity to review the information and ask questions of the organizations. And then instead of doing it in one meeting and trying to give your evaluation, I know that a lot of commissioners struggled with getting the information at the meeting where they had already submitted their information. So it was to be able to still comply with the June date for council to approve the funding.
Yes. Okay. All
Okay.
right. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And Commissioner Minna, I think you have it. If you have the same question, the date.
Yeah, I have some questions regarding the date. So now we have a chance to ask them question before we fill the evaluation form. So my question is, when we ask them questions, could we ask them to for those organizations they applied in previous year? Can we request them to give a summary of how they used the community funding? Because I know our city will going to review their the summary in May, but maybe in our first meeting they can give us some rough idea about that. I would like to know that they can provide whatever information they have that may help us to evaluate those organizations already got the funding.
So this is like, maybe if I understand correctly, Commissioner Meena, so this is, since we are pulling in the date or we are going early, do you want to have additional data to be available to help evaluate? Is that?
No, what I mean,
Not additional data, the previous report.
so
Maybe
in the past, we only have one chance. We submit the evaluation form and we can ask questions to those organizations. That's in one meeting. But this time we have a meeting before that, we can ask a question. So I just hope they can prepare for those organizations already got funding last year. I hope they can prepare a summary of how they used the community funding from previous year.
Okay, so maybe if it is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Commissioner Meena, can I put it there? I think we are going to go for how applications will be organized and reviewed. There is another section coming up. Maybe this, I think, can we move this one into that bucket so that we can.
Okay.
Does that help? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Stanek, you have it. If anything related to the date, please.
Yes. So can we make it, can we be explicit, at least in a conversation here? I don't know that needs to be in the policy, but so we said we're moving it up so we can have all this time. So February 1st is when the applications are due. Does that mean that we expect that the first meeting to have the applicants present to us would be the March meeting, and then we would have our recommendations the April meeting, and they're not due till council until June? Could you just lay that out, what that sequence actually is?
So that was our hope, that you would have them for the March meeting and then that we could go through them for the second round in the April meeting. And then Tony, I don't know if you want to jump in.
Yes, good evening, Commissioner. How it works is once we receive the recommendation from the commission, what we'll do is we bring that to the proposed budget study session, which typically happens in the month of May. And then that's when all the applications will be reviewed. And then the council will adopt the budget in June. So the first time that council will see these applications will be at the study session in May.
Okay, so that's why it's so early. There's that big gap in there. Theoretically, if we had an early meeting in May, I mean, our meetings are that usually the first week of the month, but depending on where that budget study session would be, we might miss it, I guess, if we left it to the May meeting. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Challenge for the applicants being as it's so early, but now, at least I understand the time frame now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And let me go. The next one is that I think I would like to see any clarification questions on the program funding cap. I think that'll be a good one because those are the numbers really we had it. So if any questions, Commissioner Nisha, yes, please.
Oh, hi. So I know that we've been, we keep asking like, oh, what is the funding cap? Why is it? Can you give a little bit more of an explanation on why 70? Just looking at some of the funding that's come in the past couple of years, I was just curious as to why we've gone so low when the council has historically approved higher amounts.
So I'm going to turn that question over to our Tony Zach team.
So the $70,000 amount, and good evening, Commissioner, Zach Korech, Finance Manager. The reason why we use the $70,000 is, again, as described, it is a 5-year average. That could also be adjusted if we wanted to use a 3-year average or even employ something like a 3-year rolling average. That would be something that we would be able to apply. But I think the foundation for this, the reason for establishing a cap is to, in hopes of establishing a level of consistency from not only the beginning of the application process, but when the Parks and Rec Commission formalizes their recommendation and takes it to council. I believe historically, a lot of times the city council would come on the back end and actually provide additional funding above and beyond what the Parks and Rec Commission had originally or initially recommended. And so establishing that funding cap is to, again, just to establish kind of a baseline limit for what the city's policy would be for the community funding itself.
If we were to do a 3-year versus a 5-year, because my understanding is that this program is kind of evolving and growing, and more people were getting to know what it does and what it is. Do you know what the amount would be if we did a 3-year or a 3-year?
I can pull that very quickly.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Excellent. And Commissioner Shashi, you are next. Related to the cap. Yeah.
So this cap that has come up, I mean, on all the previous years, I'm assuming, I mean, as part of the budget that the city put together, there was always enough money to, we got enough resources and never an issue. Given what we had last year and a significant reduction in our revenues, does this make sense still? Is 70K too much, too little? What was the analysis behind it besides just the fact that it was an average from 5 years?
Right. In respect to analyzing it or benchmarking it against the city's fiscal condition, and I recall back in, I think it was the late spring, I provided a brief update on the city's budgeting process and specifically the COVID-19 impacts. And we've learned a lot more since the start of the pandemic, and we're still kind of moving forward into unprecedented territory. And we don't know the extent, the magnitude, and the length and duration of these fiscal impacts on the city's primary revenue sources. But I would say that really focusing on the city's reserves and what it has done in recent years past to position the city in a very strong financial condition to be able to absorb any ongoing impacts from COVID-19, staff are comfortable with the $70,000 limit.
Okay.
Okay.
And just thank you, Tony. We received the three-year average would be $92,400.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. And I think Commissioner Stanek, you have a question on the same line on the funding cap.
Yeah, so I guess my question was just going to be, could we see the actual numbers from the 5 years? I guess I know the last two because those are the two that they've come to the commission, and those were basically 90,000 last year, I think, and 89.8 the year before. And then I guess if you're telling me the average of the three, so you can tell me what those 5 numbers are. It sounds like it's definitely been a wide range.
The 2 preceding years, starting with fiscal year 2016-17 was $40,750. And in fiscal year 17-18, it was $52,400.
And so then 18 must have been like 96,000 or something.
The subsequent year, so actually in fiscal year 18-19, that total amount, and Tony, if you can fact check me along the way, between fiscal year 17-18 and fiscal year 18-19, the amount remained the same at $52,400. And it wasn't, the reason why that 3-year average was significantly higher, and even when we look at that 5-year average is higher than those 3 years, is because in fiscal year 2019-20, the amount was $114,800. And then most recently, this budget year, decreased slightly over the previous year, but at $110,000. So the 2 most recent years have definitely brought that average, both 3-year and 5-year, up significantly.
Okay, I'm wondering, are you including the Historical Society 20 grand in there? I'm thinking maybe that's part of what's.
If I recall correctly, that was, I'll say, excluded from the community funding process. Was that in 2019-20?
Yes, I think the last year, right? First time they
just
said
this year, actually.
Just this year. Then the
last year, yeah.
No,
well, the 2 years actually. Yeah, they didn't make it the year before, but they still got the money. So
okay.
That was. So these numbers do or do not include that 20,000 for Historical Society?
They do.
So would the 70,000 include 20,000 for Historical Society?
It would.
Is that the proposal?
It is.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, that answer.
Thank you. And I think Commissioner Nisha, you have some question on the same line.
Yeah, just actually just to follow up to that. Didn't the city council include the Historical Society now as a part of their regular budgeting process and no longer, like, it's no longer going to come through the community grants funding process? Because I believe that was our recommendation, was that we had sent it to council with the understanding that Historical Society wasn't getting funding because we were asking them to make it a part of their line item.
That's correct. It's no longer subject to the application and review process, but it's still part of the community funding budget.
So it would still be taken out of this 70K.
If the Parks and Recreation Commission desires, we could remove that $20,000 amount for Historical Society in the previous 2 years from that calculation. We could do
Okay.
that.
Thanks.
I also have a point of clarification too. In fiscal year 20, we have the total funding amount was $114,800, as mentioned, but the Parks and Rec Commission actually approved only the $109,800. There was an additional $5,000 awarded by City Council during what we called an out of cycle funding request by, I believe it was West Valley Community Services. So the amount was $109,800 plus an additional $5,000 in the middle of the fiscal year, which brought it to the amount of $114,800.
And just to be
Okay.
absolutely clear, that included the 20,000 for the Historical Society, or that was out? I mean, I got confused. That
These dollar amounts currently include the $20,000 for Historical Society.
Okay. Thank you. I think maybe we will have more on the discussion side on this particular topic, looks like. So if there's no question on that front, I think I had some couple of questions on the date, but I think Commissioner's already put in there, so I can skip mine. And then any clarification questions on how applications will be organized, reviewed, and eligibility requirements. I didn't see anything specific called out in the presentation per se on any changes in it, but I still would like commissioners to have clarifying questions on those front. Commissioner Nisha, I think you are on.
Yeah, I didn't understand the portion about, I'm sorry, my brain. I didn't understand the portion about the festivals who had gotten waivers from another part of the city coming back for that. Do you mind explaining that part again? And also the why behind it.
Yeah, so one of the things that council had mentioned in the past is that there are a number of groups that get funding from a number of different places. Well, one of the ones that's actually a set policy is the festival fee waivers that go to council with the budget. So there are groups, so Cherry Blossom, Fall Festival, Diwali, all those festivals, they have been approved by council to get fees waived. And so we are recommending that they cannot apply for the same festival for funding through this. So just more money than they're already getting waived, but they could put in an application to you guys for something different. In our in our community funding grant application, they do have to state if they're getting funding from other places. So you guys will be fully aware when they do apply if they're getting it from somewhere else. But we were just asking that somebody not get, staffing and rooms and sheriffs and PW waived and then come in and ask for more money for that same event.
Oh, sorry, Anisha, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. I'm assuming none of this has been communicated out to any of the festivals, so none of them know to plan for this?
At this time, no, because nothing's been approved yet.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And I think Commissioner Stanek, you have a question on the same lines?
Yeah, so I wanted to know how much of those fee waivers worth, just for the Cherry Blossom, for the Harvest Festival, and what are the timing of when they apply for those?
So those are all a little different. I would have to pull that information for you. There is the festival policy on our website that states when they can apply. It's not the same as the community funding grant policy where there's a specific time period. They have to do it a certain amount of time before their event. So everybody's not doing it at the same time. However, there is also that if it is a current festival that in the previous year did well and is a community, basically the community comes out to the festival and it's got good, amount of people and everything else that they are put into, the budget for council to approve or not approve.
Can you give us a ballpark? Are we talking $200 or $5,000?
Oh yeah, not 200.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to understand. You know, how is it compared to what the grant funding usually is for these things?
So every festival's a little different because
Of course.
it costs like sheriffs and such, and some are 2 days and some are 1 day. But overall, for
I think if it's taking time to look into it, you can look into it and then we can just share
It's
that
about
during part of the discussion.
14 different events, and it's about $160,000 altogether.
Okay, so maybe averaging about 10 grand each? Did I get that math right in my
And
head?
some are a lot higher and some are a lot lower, but yes.
Okay, and okay, I think the rest is not a question, but more
Okay.
comments.
Sure. Any other questions on these fronts? If not, I think there's no other questions on, because the one thing is that I'm not sure it's asking about eligibility requirements and how applications will be organized and reviewed. I don't see any changes being presented today. So that would be my question to start with, is that I know we want to ask, but I don't think that anything is changing. Does that mean that only the dates are changing, cap is changing, the rest all stays same? Can I assume that? I think that's a question to Rachel and Tony. Is the rest of the process stays same except these modifications, a date and a cap?
Most of the process is extremely similar. We went through and we changed some wording based on what we heard from both commission and city council, but really and truly most of the policies stayed very similar.
Okay, thank you. And I do have something, but it's a comment. I'll come back later. And I think Commissioner Nisha has some more questions.
Yeah, I just have one last question, which is, is this codifying the process that we had used the second or last time in terms of whatever our scores were? We just cut it at that. Is this codifying that? Because that was a process we had adopted in our review session, and I just wanted to ensure that that was not a process from the commission perspective that we were codifying by approving this.
So Joanne, I'm actually gonna let you answer that one because I wasn't part of the process last year.
So the policy that we're reviewing right now is separate from your evaluation. So we will actually come back to your evaluation at an upcoming meeting.
Oh, sounds good.
Discuss that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, thank you. Otherwise, Commissioner Nisha already got ready with the 2 mugs of coffee on the right side and left side so that we can go for until 2-3 hours on it. Oh, no, we are not. Okay, thank you. Excellent. So there's no other questions, and I'm just looking for any public comment. And is there any attendees? I don't see anyone there. So with that, I think we can move on to discussions on this particular topic, which we haven't asked for anything. I know, Commissioner Stanek, you had some comments, you started with it. Let's go and discuss anything on this part. Open now. Commissioner Nisha, you raised your hand first. Sure. Let's go for it.
So in terms of the submission date, I am, a big fan of it. Like, we really wanted these organizations to come and actually talk to us. So I think that that's great. And this is really working that in. We can't fix the calendar in May to make sure we have our meeting right before. So we kind of don't have much of an option. So this makes perfect sense. And I know at least, before the organizations were getting a lot of communication in terms of when to submit their applications. We didn't really hear any feedback of somebody being like, I missed it, I didn't know, or anything like that. So I'm hoping that because we have all that contact information and this won't be an issue. So I think that from that perspective, I'm very comfortable with it. In terms of the funding cap, it seems a little bit low given the past 3 years. That having been said, if we do want to go with the $70K, I would definitely want for the Historical Society to not be included, because that was actually the reason that we hadn't included it last year, or that we asked for it to not be included in the community funding grant decision-making process, is that it should be something that is annually funded, and the City Council did approve that as something that should be separately funded. So if we do want whatever cap that we choose, 70,000, 80,000, whatever, I don't think that the Historical Society should be made a part of that, because that was the whole point of having it go through City Council. And then the only other two things are, one, Commissioner Mina had actually brought this up about requiring the, like, basically like the receipts, like how did they spend the money, how effective, all that stuff. I would love to see that information submitted with their either with their application, ideally after the event has been completed, and then we'll check in when the applications come, but we don't necessarily have to do that on a rolling basis. I think that that's really important to require of the organizations to give to us, so we know what they've spent their money on. And especially during COVID times, I think it's even more important for us to know kind of what was spent, what wasn't spent, who was able to pivot, who wasn't able to pivot their community programs, and all of that kind of stuff. And then the last portion is the festivals. I totally understand not wanting multiple pipelines to go into the same event. My hesitation, though, is twofold. One is that a lot of these community organizations that are coming with these festivals are repeats. So they're planning on this funding as part of how they're building. And I'm wondering if this is something that could be like, hey, you know, we're allowing it for this next year, but this is the last time you will be able to double dip, so that they have the ability to taper off. And quite frankly, like, I mean, at the rate it's going now, we're not really going to have major outdoor festivals from January to June anyways. So this might not really be too much of an issue for the upcoming year, but I don't want it to become policy and something we have to deal with later on. And then the second thing is, I think different festivals have different amounts. And so if it is a festival that's only getting like maybe $2,000 or $3,000 off versus 25,000, I don't know the numbers again, but I'm, you know, estimating here. I wonder if there's like a cap or a sliding scale saying, you know, any organization that's receiving more than $5,000 from the city can no longer apply for a community grant. If your organization is receiving less than $5,000, you're allowed to ask for the grant, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it. One of the reasons we look at it, and I actually score very heavily against organizations that have external sources of funding, because to me, like, I want to see that they're going to different sources. But I think just like that small caveat, making it a little bit more sensitive to organizations that might not be as well funded or as big, I think would just be helpful.
Okay, thank you. And the Commissioner Shashi, you have something to talk about it.
It seems like a good idea for us to get the application date moving forward. My question, it's kind of a question comment. Can somebody give me the complete timeline, because I'm a little confused. We get the applications in April, and then we have a meeting in March where they present to us. How does, Joanne, can you comment on that?
So we're asking for them to, we'll make the application available to organizations in January for their submission. They're due February 1st. That gives staff a month. A lot of times these are very lengthy applications, so we have to review them for their completeness and then for their eligibility. Do they meet all the eligibility requirements? And then we will put together a staff report and bring those applications to you as a commission at the March meeting, and ask the organizations to be present to provide any clarifying questions that you may have. Then at the April meeting, we'll ask that you submit your evaluations and have your debates on which organizations you wish to recommend. And then in May, the recommended organizations will be included in the study session for council for the budget. And then in June, they adopt the budget at the city council meeting. If I got any of that wrong, Feel free to pipe in, anybody.
So between March and April, let's just say 3 people have to give us more information. Is there a deadline established before we make our evaluation, or is it going to be up to that April meeting that they can provide that information? Just so we can take that into consideration when we make that, rather than,
right.
Go ahead.
So my recommendation would be that we would invite all the organizations to present at the March meeting. And so that you could gather all the information to answer all the questions that you may have. And that gives you a month to, again, a month is not as flexible as it sounds, because our agendas are required, 72. So there's some legwork that needs to be done in the background. So it gives a few weeks for you to give your evaluation, and then you can discuss your evaluations at the April meeting.
Right. But what I'm saying is, when they come in March, and let's just say we've asked 3 of them to come back with more information, when do they submit that information before we make the evaluation in April?
I mean, I think that if you need additional clarifying information from an organization and they're not prepared to provide that in March, that's something we'll have to address then. We may have to have a special meeting. I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm hoping.
So does that mean that they become disqualified for this year? Or there must be some, otherwise we're constantly keeping the door open kind of thing, right? When do we evaluate the stuff? Or is there a timeline? I'm asking, I'm not suggesting.
No. Absolutely. I mean, I would hope that, again, all of the required information needs to be submitted by the February 1st deadline. And again, I believe that March is really clarifying questions about the organization or what their event or program will do or provide to the community. They will have, former organizations that have received funding will be able to answer questions at that time about, previous programs or previous events that they've held. I would assume that they would send someone who could answer questions of that nature.
Okay. Now, okay, that would make sense. And then I guess a second point, and this is, not to belabor Mina's point, but really, if someone's applying for let's just take the fall festival, for example, and this particular year, when they come in February, we'll assume that they're going to have a fall festival in October, keep all our fingers crossed, of course, but they would not have spent that money when they come in for asking that. So do we then put them on the list? I mean, this is money that they have that was part of the budget that was already given to them. Does that, I mean, this year has been very different from everything we've done in the previous year. So it's a lesson learned in putting a policy together. So they were supposed to do it in fall. Obviously, given the circumstances, they couldn't. They were given 10,000 or whatever amount they were given. That 10,000 check is with them. That's money that's already spent. If they come back and say, we need another, 5 or 10, do we say, do we put some kind of a policy in place that says you go back and spend the money you have, and if you need more money, get it from somewhere else? Would we make statements like that? Would we make it part of the policy rather than to keep giving them money every year with no,
actual benefit
nothing to be seen. Yeah, no benefit to be seen, really.
So let me take a swing at this, and then I'm going to turn it over to Zach and Tony. It is explicitly asked in the application form for them to explain how previous grant funds were spent. So that is a question in the application. But let me turn it over to Tony and Zach about specifics as far as information that they provide us based on how they spend their funds.
And Joanne, that's absolutely correct. I would just add one thing that part of the policy and specifically the procedure section we outline or it outlines that due by the 15th business day of July following the fiscal year in which the grant funds were dispersed, there's to be a written report submitted on how those funds are used. And so there are a lot of, I'll call them checks and balances and verification points to ensure that the funds are used appropriately and fully. I might need to reach on Tony a little bit just to see kind of if there's any new updates that I haven't been made aware of, but I'll take a quick stab, and if we need to clarify it, we can. I would imagine that particularly given COVID-19, there certainly could be instances where organizations were unable to use the funds that they received as part of the fiscal year 2020-21 community funding program. And as such, it could be most appropriate to come back to the Parks and Rec Commission or City Council, or go through some sort of formal process to either discuss that matter or discuss various options that would be deemed reasonable at that point in time.
I'd also like to point out that in the policy, it does stipulate that applicants will be expected to reimburse the city any funding awarded and not used for their program, project, or event.
Yeah, I remember that. So, I mean, taking any one of the examples, there were like 3 or 4 that we thought, would happen maybe by fall when we did this, but now we know in hindsight, there's no chance of that happening, maybe till next fall. So I think there was one where it was a student exchange program or something. I don't think anybody traveled from wherever they were traveling from to here. So in these cases, when they do the application, do they still get, I know they have to submit their report by July 15th. But since there was a date before, now they come back and they say, I want those X number of dollars more, do we have a way to say, okay, you didn't spend last time's money that we gave you, so you don't qualify, you're not eligible? Is there some kind of a statement in there saying, go spend the money you already have, or figure out how you're going to return it and we give it back to you?
I mean, I think that's part of the clarifying question portion of the organization coming to you. So if an organization came to you and said, we want more money for next year, and you said to them, well, we gave you money for this year and you hadn't spent the money, you see what I'm saying? It's very hard though to delineate. Am I missing the point? Sorry.
Yeah, maybe, sorry, maybe if I understand.
Go ahead.
Sorry to just interject. I was just listening in before I let Commissioner Stanek to come in. So the question, if I understand correctly, and I think I don't think that we will leave it to the organization, rather it's a policy from our end. So
right.
they are supposed to, the situation is that if they have the money already and if they haven't spent, and they are supposed to give back in July, right? If they're not going to spend until July, they have to reimburse. I mean, they have to give back the money to city, correct? If assuming that the organization got $10,000, they applied again. And since we know that they say that they will spend from the time when they apply, which is in February, by the time they think that, no, March, April, May, June, July, I got another 5 months, I'm going to spend the 10,000, right? So sure. So they will submit the application. But by July, if they are not able to spend on it, and if they haven't come for any extension, ask for it, then they have to give the money back to city. Is that correct? That's the policy, number one. And if they don't, the further allocation will not go. Is that a policy exists like that? Because if they're already holding a $10,000, they haven't even given back to us. I know May we are going to do the funding proposal, whatnot, and I think we will be allocating in June or July. I don't know when we will allocate. When we allocate, do we take into consideration of that the money is sitting in them, they haven't submitted it, and they haven't? Are we going to hold it? Are we going to reimburse anyway, submit the second one? We are going to give another 10,000, expecting that they will give back by July that the money is spent, or
right.
give back those 10,000 from last year. I just want that policy has to be dictated by us. I don't think that we will ask the organization. I think
right.
that's what
So
the
we
company
don't
is trying to get in, I believe. Commissioner Sashi? Is that?
Yeah, exactly. So if they are coming, if they did not get a chance to spend it the last year, they do have until July next year to come in, but they have got something that they want to do in October. So they come in again and say, we want $10,000. Now we grant them the $10,000. We need to make sure that that policy of returning the money for money not used is very clearly implemented, so that they don't think, I have the 10,000 from next year. Now I'm getting another 10,000. I land up with 20,000 that I can use. There should be no confusion over that. It should be absolutely clear that, either they say, okay, we weren't able to use it, we're going to continue to use it, sort of like an apply for an extension, as opposed to maybe the application. But that needs to be very clearly specified, that money, if it hasn't been used, and in fact, I would like that policy to be stated. If you give me a date of October 15th, and when you come in for an application, you don't have to wait till July to give me that money back if you haven't used it. It's probably more difficult for you to implement, but it should be a very simple thing for them to return the money if they haven't used it, right? There's no reason for them to keep it from October 15th to July 15th. If they haven't used the money for an event.
The way Joanne read it, it sounded pretty clear to me. If you haven't used it, you pay it back. Period.
No, that's right. But what I'm trying to say is you haven't used it. You were supposed to do something in October. You haven't done it in October. The only chance you probably will do it is in next October. But you wait till July 15th.
So if they don't do it by the next October, they owe it back to us. They may come back in January and say, we didn't do it, but they're requesting for a new event. It's for a new event. And so there's no expectation. And I think Joanne read it pretty clearly that if they didn't use it for last October or some other replacement event, that they owe it back to us, and they're not going to take $20,000. It never says that. That's not an expectation that they could do that at all. It sounds very clear that they owe it back to us if they don't use it.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe given that one, I think you wanted to talk about it, so I'm lowering your hand as well. So if it is on the same topic, you can continue.
So I guess some of my comments have to do with the 70,000. That now we've clarified that the 70,000, the way you were talking about it, the council has agreed they want to give the Historical Society $20,000 every year away from community grants. And so we need to be thinking about the amount of money we're giving away from what the Historical Society is getting. But also, if we're saying you can't get these fee waivers, it seems that is something that the council and the city has been very supportive, that it goes hand in hand, that they're giving fee waivers for these festivals that they really want to happen, and they're giving community grants on top of it. So if we look at just how much these organizations were getting for the community grants, and not also how much they were actually not having to pay due to fee waivers, we're underestimating how much they were relying on, or how much community benefit was the organizations were getting. So I am concerned about the number. And I also feel that I really wanted this, I wanted a range to come from the council. I am not comfortable with us coming up with an average. And I also think, given what we've seen in the variability and the things that are going on, that some years it's going to have to be cut back, and some years it should be more, because last year was a good year, and just growing it by a CPI seems very formulative and not really reflecting what's going on in our community and maybe our priorities. So I guess I'm not comfortable with saying it's a cap. Maybe it's just a semantic thing, that maybe I would like to see a range between here and there are the guidelines. The council gets to decide, and I don't want to underestimate it because we think, oh, the council wants to give more, so let's do a lower number and anticipate that they're going to get more. I almost feel like, why don't we just rank and let the council draw a line where they want to draw a line? You know, so if we see all these things and it comes in, and every year is different. I mean, 2 years ago, it was over $200,000 in requests. Last year, they ended up giving money to everybody, and it wasn't the full amount, but I think it's very variable, and I think it's very hard to predict. And unless the city council has a real preference of this is how much we want to put in, and they can predict that into the future, I feel like maybe what we should be doing is prioritizing, maybe drawing a line somewhere that we say, these are priorities, but we're going to give it all to the council anyway. So what is the value, I guess I'm wondering, of this cap? It makes me very uncomfortable.
Okay, so I don't see any answer yet here on the team. So maybe let me allow Commissioner Mina Oswald to have her comment or question, then we can just.
I'm not sure.
Go ahead, Commissioner Mina.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe it's like the classification question, because I heard historical society was mentioned so many times, but I'm still don't understand. So what's the review process for the funding to a historical society? Is that only goes through council? Is that right? So they have some evaluation process for this. Yeah, I'm just wondering.
Pretty much determined that they want to give they want to support the historical society, and the last couple of years it's been $20,000. And they didn't. That's an ongoing thing.
I'm just curious because I remember they go to a classroom to talk about the history of Cupertino, and they need to maintain some to display something about Cupertino and let people visit. But during this year, I don't think we have such activities because all school closed. So I'm just wondering who is going to reveal the funding, how they're used. So they only report to council, is that right?
Correct. So if I may interject here. So as per the last time when we decided, Commissioner Mina, that yes, this will not be considered as the community, the organizations coming and asking for this fund. That will be considered like other sister city and others. We typically city directly funds it. We make sure that let city council directly handle it. So how they evaluate this process, all of them will not come here. I think it should directly go to the council. That's my interpretation, because we don't do anything with it. Last time we said, oh, it's not falling into that bucket. So city council allocated 20K, whether it has been spent, how they do it, I expect that I think city council directly handling it. I don't think that we will be doing or any review. That's my understanding based on. Okay, so I do. Okay, Commissioner Sanak, you have some things, and after that I'll jump in. Go ahead, Commissioner Sanak.
Yeah, I mean you could go if you want.
No, you finish it. No, I do got a few questions based on a lot of things I noted down here, so I will come back, but I'll let you finish it.
So one of my other comments was that I thought that we should have something in the policy that if it's an organization that has an opportunity or is defined somewhere in our city regulations or whatever they are, that they can be funded in a different way. And specifically, I'm talking about the sister cities. So there's a very specific policy with respect to sister cities that if, when you have exchange students, and this is how we will fund you. And it seems to me that they should not be going around that policy to come to us for different funding. It seems to me that the city has identified that the way they want to support the sister cities is by supporting their exchange program and by the number of students. And depending on the number of students, that's how much money you get. And so if they're not exchanging students, it didn't seem like to me like they should be looking for other money, because I thought that the city has identified how they want to support and what program they want to support with the sister city. So that one in particular, I don't know if there's other policies where we're funding specific kinds of organizations. I'm not aware of them, but I mean, you could feel free to enlighten me. But that one in particular, I was very uncomfortable with, because I think the council also forgets that there are other opportunities. And I think, frankly, last year, they didn't even think about the fact that, oh, the sister city has another different way that they should be getting funding. And I'm concerned that once one sister city has come in to get funding, that they're all going to jump in here. And we love our sister cities, but we already have a policy for how the city has defined how they want to support them. So that was another comment that I wanted to make.
Great. Thank you. I think let me go with a couple of comments I got. Maybe I'll start latching on to what the Commissioner Stanek said exactly. Like we did the Historical Society as a separate entity kind of, it's okay, that's been directly handled by council, not by us. All the sister cities were also, and even we did conscious effort last time as well. We said, we raised this concern that they applied for it, but they're also part of the standard the division process from directly handled or funded by the city council, why they are. But at the time, we didn't have any clear policy defined, so we let them come in. But based on the ranking anyway, they were not in the top, whatever we drew the line. But still, at the end of it, they did get fund from commission, from the council, because they said, okay, all the rest of the people get 50% of what they asked for, right? While we personally, I felt that it's okay for those other things, but I think at the time it was not notified that, okay, this sister city anyway get the fund from others. Otherwise, think about it. All other cities, all of the sister cities could have applied. They might have gone below the line. And even they might have got the 50% of it, even they were not above the line, because they could have been in the bucket, then they could have got all 50% of what they might have asked. Anybody can ask 20K, and then you get 50% of it, right? So it is kind of setting a different kind of a thing. So we need to have the policy. I think one of the things which I echo what Commissioner Stanek said, I think Dr. Joanne and others involving in this one, definitely defining a policy like we defined for the Historical Society. We need to make sure that the sister cities and others who are already directly being funded and being managed by council, right? If they whether they have to, if they have to be part of it, then there need to be a very clear definition, or they should not be part of this one. Like we put the Historical Society outside, because these are a lot of things which is already funded by the city. So that's one of my comments. I think.
So, Paul, sorry, just to jump in real quick for a second.
Sure.
We did think about those things, and other organizations that may receive funding from the city are eligible right now to apply for the community funding grant. They do have to disclose all other funding in the application. And so we're really leaving it up to commission to evaluate that accordingly. I will tell you that one thing that we are going to do is make sure that we are doing our best to put together all of the information for council. So once it gets to council, not only are they going to see those festival fee waivers, the community funding, any other funding and waivers that they do. Because one thing to remember is that there are a lot of people that go to council outside of this process for fee waivers, and we can't capture them all in a policy or a rule as to whether or not they can do this. So our hope is that commission through the application will evaluate accordingly any of those other groups.
Chair, if I may, if I can ask a follow-up question to your question.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
What was the impetus for not applying the same like logic for the festivals where you're like, oh, they got the money for fee waivers, they shouldn't be in this, versus sister cities? What was just like, I'm just curious what the difference was.
So the festival fee waivers have a set how it gets done, I guess you could say, and they get sent to council with the budget process. So it's kind of part of what we're doing now, going through and looking at these policies and understanding how council allows the fee waivers that they do. And so we are working on the full project, I guess you could say. And this is only a piece of it. But right now, the goal is that because they do have to say in the application any other funding they're getting, that you guys would be able to evaluate that through the information they provide.
Okay, so maybe I do have some more clarifying questions, maybe on comments as well. Rachel, you can help me. So let's close this topic on the particular one. So if the same, for example, I think last time I did remember that it's about the student exchange program. If those sister cities are already getting funded for the same cost for the student exchange program from the city, they're coming back to here as a community fund for the same cost. We don't know how much we keep on funding it, right? So that's the reason we asked. If city is directly funding them for all their ask, we are double funding it, right? From one, rather it is taking away the funding for the other communities which may be needed. That's the rationale behind. It's not that we don't want to, but if they don't put a community, if there is a strict policy on it, it's going to dilute the entire thing, and you will see a long list of things which are getting funded already, right? But is also going to come and ask for the same thing. So again, I will leave it to you. I think a lot of commissioners expressed what their viewpoints. I think I'll leave it to Dr. Joanne and you all to think about it, what those funding process. I don't think that we will solve, and I don't think that you will be able to make a decision right away too. But that's the kind of a concern too, that we don't want to double fund the same, because rather we will give it to someone who never received it. That's one. The second one is the festivals. I think you mentioned that if you are funding that, they won't be even eligible, which I think I might question it, simply because city funds it. I agree. Assuming that one of those festivals, they get funded with all the cost, as you said, average $10,000. But still they can get additional $10,000 too, because we said for any community fund, the maximum cap is $20,000, right? So those organizations can still come and ask for, where they declare that, even they don't have to declare. City can simply put in saying that, oh, they received, or this is what we are going to spend, like $10,000 or $12,000, whatever, right? Then we will know that they're at the maximum, they're eligible one for $8,000. We know that. But still they might be. And the only question I have is that why do we want to disqualify them? Because if we are going to disqualify them, not even eligible to apply for the community fund, then it should be applied to all the things like the sister city, every one of them too. Doesn't matter how much they get it. They get something from city one way or other, because they are attached to the city ecosystem directly. Unlike any other community organizations coming and ask, they don't have any direct connection at all. But every sister cities have a direct connections with the city and the funding and all of them, right? That means if they are getting a funding, in my opinion, they should not be eligible too. If you are putting a bar for the organizations with the festive amount where we are spending are not eligible to apply, I would apply the same rule for the other sister cities, others who are directly connected, getting some funding one way or other. It could be 5,000 or whatever, right? So I think otherwise we are already having a two different scale, which puts us in an awkward situation when we evaluate what to do that. So that's how personally I feel that's going to be a trouble in doing evaluation. So let me stop there. I know Commissioner Sashi want to add something, please.
I'm new to this, so explain to me. It's like you have the sister city program, you have whatever festivals, and all of these are being funded by the city regardless of the community program. So when you kind of double dip, whether it's, sister city was obviously too much of an example, but even other festivals that get all of these, this removes the money from being provided to another community event. So can someone explain to me what is the purpose behind this community funding? I mean, I thought it really was to, provide an opportunity for multiple organizations to provide some sort of a service or a benefit to the community. Now, why are we allowing double dipping regardless of whether it's a festival or a sister city?
Maybe Dr. Joanne or Rachel, do you have anything on what to say about that?
Well, I mean, what I'm hearing from commissioners is that you'd like to remove the restrictions so that everyone can apply basically, and then you can analyze based on how much funding they get from the city, whether or not they would qualify, or you would rank them, differently based on how much they're getting. So you have to take into account the big picture, right? A festival budget could be $10,000 and they could get fee waivers for $5,000. So maybe they're asking for another $5,000. So it's all relative. So I think that your feedback is valid about, not incorporating festivals or sister cities, and let everybody be evaluated on the same criteria. They all have the same chance to apply, and then you all make your recommendation based on the big picture of whatever event or program or activity they're requesting funding for.
I think removing that restriction is going in the right direction.
Yeah, and one other additional ask, Dr. Giovanna, Rachel, is that instead of asking them to tell us, okay, how much you received from us, because we know that city is the one giving, either being the fee waiver or sheriffs or whatever the time, which Rachel called about 160,000 or 100,000, whatever, for overall. I think we have the number, so we should call that out. We should put it in the application by ourselves, because when I don't know whether they know it. Otherwise, you have to double check, and if they have given something low, then we need to put the right numbers there in the application. City has to provide how much city has already provided to that particular organization as an addendum otherwise. So we can have a reference, because we just go by what applicants put in there, right? We don't know. But I know in this case, city already given that. So you have the account. If you have 16,000 and city has already given 20,000 already for that organization, absolutely, we know that they're not eligible because they cannot get more than, because they already got 20,000 from the city. So they may not be even eligible to get anything because our cap is 20K, right? So it'll be good to have the data to be provided if that doesn't match with what the applicants put in there. Because we ask, okay, how much you received from city in any way? Sometimes people say no, and we just go by that one because we don't go into counter check. But at least city can provide, oh, these are the organizations we already funded. Here is a list. Here is what the amount in a separate document as well. That's okay. So we can just do a cross check saying that, okay, this is what these organizations, city already funded it. That will help us. These are only additional data for us to evaluate. Excellent. So I think no further discussion if I take it. There's no answer.
I guess I'd like to hear from the other commissioners what they think about my comments about the cap, because I put some comments out there and I haven't gotten any feedback. So I'd like to hear what others are thinking about that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for bringing, sorry, Commissioner, I was just thinking about, let me share that one. Thanks for bringing in Commissioner Stanek. So the cap wise, the currently, I think if my understanding is correct, then the Park and Rec department comes up with some number, which is, I would call as a guideline. This is what it is, because last time we did exactly with that, we tried to do it. But the moment it went to the council said, hey, forget about it. I have another big chunk of money from back pocket and I'm going to throw that, right? It's okay. We're happy. It's not that we didn't know, but we operated strictly. So what we are thinking is that what the department is giving is a guideline that we will stick on. When we draw the line, we will still do that, but we'll still prioritize the rest of them in the part, which will go anywhere. So I think that's what I see it, Commissioner Stanek. I don't know, even if they give a range or not, doesn't matter, because right now 70K seems to be a guideline saying that, hey, can your priorities stay within the 70K? That's okay, we can do that. But the moment it goes to the council and it goes beyond that 70K one, because we say that the rest of the priorities also being submitted, then city says, no, I have a 20K saved. Now I have another 20K, which I can give it to the rest of the people. It's up to them. That's how I feel it. But my thinking that we will stick with that 70K, whatever as a guideline to draw the line but the below the line or whatever, I think it is a city's decision, city council's decision. That's how I think, because I seen it already last year. So we were legally spending so much time on a penny wise, kind of dollar wise. How do we really draw the line? So that's my input. But also additional comment. It is 70K. I don't think that this should include the 20K of what we give it to the historical society as well, because right now, if that is the case, then I would expect all the money given to all the sister city also should be included in this. But this community fund should be excluded to that of what has been given to others. Otherwise, this is not a number because it just includes the historical society. Then what about the sister city? Because they're also coming as an eligible to apply, but we have given some money to them earlier. Then that means that should be added to it, maybe another 10,000. So it means 80,000. So we don't know what the number is correctly. So I would also put my recommendation or request is that whenever for the community fund, it is excluded from whatever it has been directly given by the city council. So that's where we can operate. If that is only 50K, so be it. We can just operate on 50K and draw the line. So that's my comment on top of Commissioner Stanek's original thing. But there are already commissioners wanted to share their opinion. So Commissioner Nisha, yours, and then Sashi later.
I think I echo again the keep the historical society out of the mix for that 70K. Honestly, Commissioner Stanek, I didn't think about having a scale. I think that would be really interesting. I kind of think that 70K is too low in terms of a cap, mostly because we don't know what kind of special projects or special things might be coming through. We already set a cap of 20,000 for an individual, or like for an individual organization. And I think that's pretty like delineated enough that we have a 20,000 cap for any organization. However, I don't really like the idea of setting one amount that will exist in perpetuity. So like if we're given from the city council or from the budget, saying, hey, like next year we project that, you know, we're going to be doing real well. So we have 120,000, but the future year or like a subsequent year, hey, things been really tight for us. It's really only going to be 50,000. I would hesitate to put 70K like in a static policy. So maybe a sliding scale is a good way for us to go. And the city council really does whatever they want. So I don't even know if there's like all that much of a point of us putting a cap on it anyways. But I think that 70K would be too low. And if an alternative, I think is great is to have a sliding scale.
Okay, Commissioner Shashi, you're next.
On the historical society, I can tend to agree with everybody that either you take it out, or if you're going to make it part of this budget, then we get to review what's being spent on it. Either, you know, we either review it or we just leave it as a separate part of the budget. Now, question I have is, I mean, I only have been here for what, almost not even a year. So it seems to be a policy where city council, we go and spend the time to actually get in here and spend the time and say, okay, this dollar goes here or that dollar goes there. And then the city council comes around and says, oh, we have extra money. So that extra money doesn't magically appear. It obviously was somewhere in the budget. Why can't we have access to that information when we make this decision? I mean, what is the point of us evaluating this, putting it on a list, and then giving it to city council and they make a decision? I wouldn't say random, but at the same time, we spend all this time for them to just throw the whole damn thing out and do whatever they want. Then why are we doing it? Or why are they doing it? Why not give us all the money? We can review the whole damn thing, because you would want them to look at commissions, to give you some kind of a reference to make a decision. Okay, we don't make the decision, but there should be a reference. And from what I figured in the one time I experienced, it was just throw it out the window, man. These guys don't know what they're doing. It's like a waste of everyone's time. So either put everything together, give us all the money that you possibly have, and we'll spread it out nicely. We'll spend the time to figure out who needs what and where and why. And we give you a list. You can say whether you want to take top 6, top 8, all of them. That's your decision at that point, rather than, okay, I have extra money, because that seems like a waste of our time and their time.
Right. Yeah. So let's see, Commissioner Stanek and then Commissioner Meena.
Okay, yeah, so, I completely agree with that. I don't think, even though they threw more money at it, they didn't completely ignore us, because they did put weight behind what we made a higher priority versus a lower priority. So the lower priority ones didn't get as much money as they asked for. So at least that's something. So that was why I was thinking maybe, what they were looking for and what they did last year is we had a top tier, a second tier, and the rest, and they wanted to see them all. And that's why I was thinking maybe we just do the list. Maybe we draw a line where it seems reasonable. Sometimes there's a very reasonable break in the way the rankings come in. And after we discuss them, like 2 years ago, there was a top 10 that the commission really saw. There was a coming together and a consensus, and the numbers proved that out. And then there was a gap between everybody else. And so there was a very natural break. Last year, we didn't have that. Partly, there weren't as many applicants. So, and it made it harder, and we didn't have as much discussion about the rankings afterwards that I know Commissioner Tombe would have really liked to see us do. And I think we will have more of that in the future. So that's why there's a part of me that feels like, what if we just rank it? It comes back to, we have all these buckets. Are we going to rank within the buckets, or are we going to just do a ranking and things fall where they are? And then we could say, we have a strong preference for those above this line, and really still it is the council's decision, and they can draw that line wherever they want it. I do think 70 is too low, though.
Sure.
Yeah,
sorry, Commissioner Nisha,
okay.
Sorry, just a second. Commissioner Mina, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I the guideline is useful to us, the 5-year guideline. So if there's any special event happen, maybe we can have some extra discussion. But generally, I do think we need a 5-year cap as a guideline for that. Because if you review the current application, I think this guideline is not so low, because I only see some organizations, they got 10K per year, or some got 20K for some special project. I didn't see every organization have requested so much money. So this cap looks okay to me, I think.
Okay, you're talking about the funding cap, the 70K, is that right, Commissioner Mina?
Yes, the 5-year cap.
The 5-year cap, okay.
So if I could just hop in here, sorry, to provide some clarification. I know that last year, the commission was very interested in knowing how much money they had to work with because of COVID. So we were attempting to bring you some kind of number in order for you to have an idea of where you could work with. But we're happy to not include a cap as well. It really came from the commission wanting to have more clarification about how much money there is to work with. So that was our attempt here in proposing it in the new policy update.
Okay, just a second. I have 2 more hands. Commissioner Sashi, you can go ahead, and then Commissioner Tombe next.
This is sort of like continuing the discussion that Carol was commenting on. Agreed that the council makes the decision. My understanding is, why isn't all of that information available to us? We do spend a significant amount of time figuring out this list, whether it is based on, category or whatever. Can that information be provided to us? And why are we spending the time I guess last year was a special case where there were only 10 applicants and all 10 got funded. So there was no decision so to make, but why do we have to fund everybody? I mean, what is the logic behind there should be some kind of a guideline that comes from the city council, like okay, if you have so many applicants, or this is the budget that I want you to spend, or some kind of a guideline. So when we spend the time, it is useful for them. They don't have to go back and go through the whole thing again. They go through the whole process again, effectively. I mean, it's just why we're doing it twice.
Yeah, so maybe I have some comment, but
Sure,
thank you.
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I do have, but looks like Commissioner Nisha has something, so I'm going to let her speak. Then I will add my comments.
I just wanted to make sure that I had understood kind of what we had been saying so far, which was, or everybody seems to agree with the earlier submission date, or at least the rationale behind it, and we need that. And then we're not certain about the program funding cap. I think instead of having a singular number, it would be great to get a annual feedback from City Council of what they are willing to spend, so we can work against that number or whatever the accounting adds up to. So it's not like a set in stone, it could be less, it could be more type of thing. And then letting us actually see all of the applicants, and forcing the part that says share where you've gotten other information, or where you've gotten other funding and how much that is, so that we can like very transparently review. Does that sound about right? I just want to make sure I understand kind of what the conversation's been.
Yeah, I think that's my understanding. And so maybe just to add on top of it, and then what Commissioner Sashi said, I think this is maybe to Dr. Joanne and the rest of the staff. Looks like this the cap of 70K or whatever, that's what kind of sticky now, and people have questions around it. So and especially I do agree with Commissioner Sashi when she said, if we could have known that there is from us whatever the amount last time, it's 90K to 110K or 100, if we have something, we could have ranked it, our lines could have been much lower, and we could have funded for people who just asked for 3K. Seriously, some people asked for only 3K, and then we couldn't fund them because we know that we just drew the line. But the other people asked for 20K, and there was lower on the list. But what happened was, since everybody below the line was given 50%, the 3K team, which they really want a lot of impact, they got only 1,500. Whereas the ones which are on the lower, which they got 20K asked for it, but anyway, by default, the calculation of 50%, they got 10K. So we felt the lines were like, we were drawing on it. We said, if we could have known the budget early, saying that, hey, you can go for another like 90 to 110K kind of, we could have given. If it is 90K, this is one, looks like from a lower range to the higher range, 110K means we would fully fund those 3K, 5K people, because those communities were really asking for only $3,000. And we couldn't fund it because we thought we constrained, and we were very, very diligent to draw the line on exactly what the money was. So we didn't. If we could have lowered that one level or two level, we could have funded 2 or 3 organizations just with 3,000, 5,000. But rather, they got only 1,500, whereas the one we said that it's a bottom most, they got 10,000 because the overall ask for 20,000. You just do a simple math of 50% of your ask, you got 10,000, whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not, right? That put us in, we really worked hard in ranking it and putting those. We felt very bad even we couldn't fund those 3,000 asks. We couldn't because, again, the other people's asks were really much more important. So we just drew the line. That's what we felt. We wish we could have had that range or that budget, extra budget. So we could have really drew the line. And still, if we have another 5,000, 10,000 extra, absolutely, that's the city council call. Because we put a lot many effort, endless hours from each commissioner and debate to do it. But that we felt that that was not, at least felt as not valued as. So I think the request back to Director Joanna and the team is, it'll be good to have that number if it is 70K to 90K, because at the time suddenly there was an excess budget showed up, which we didn't know where that came up. So maybe I'm sure that you will know. Then it'll be good for us to know early so that we can put a range of first bucket. If you have 70K, this is. If you go with the 90K, this is where the lines. We can just draw specifically on it. I think that's where one of the asks. That's what I see it personally based on the data I'm hearing from a lot of commissioners.
So I want to just clarify a little bit more. So I've heard we don't want a cap, we do want a range, but we want to know the range prior to us deciding. And I don't know logistically if we can go to council and ask them for their range prior to your March, April meeting so that you have the range to work with. So I understand your frustration, but I don't think I have a valid solution to the problem. So we either need to work with propose cap or range or throw it out the window and just figure out, you know, hey, we recommend these and we don't recommend these others. So
yeah, maybe I think, as you said, Dr. Joanne, so we will have another discussion on this evaluation criteria anyway. I think we can discuss that too. But I think we may come up with, okay, whatever the cap you're coming at 70K, then we draw the line, and then we will come up with a second bucket, which will say, if there are extra money, exactly this is our organization, we want to fund it. We will call it out. It's not like peanut butter approach of spreading all over. We will say, if you have another 20K, this is what the priority, because we do work on exactly on the priorities. And then if the council want to go until the bottom of it, it's okay. But we wanted to call that out. This is the range one, whatever you're given. This is the second one we wanted to give. If you have another 20K, whatever it is, please take the second bucket and fund them full. Fund them full, because these are all 5,000, 2,000 kind of. We want them to fund it fully. Then if they have extra, then it's up to the council. They can go and do it. So we can talk about it at length. I don't think that this is a meeting we want to go deep into it. At least you're taking some input from us. I'm sure that you will talk to the city manager and the council when you have the budget team, whatever, you will have some idea, but at least you can take all our inputs back and say, this is what the commission is coming back on the cap. But at this point, I don't think that we are making any vote or anything. We're just giving you input based on it, right? So you will hear from us. And one of the other thing I just wanted to make sure is that we are also, I don't think that we have to make a vote on it, but we feel, many of the commissioners, that the Historical Society funding has to be not included in this one and should be separated out so that it helps us to really fund for the right new organization.
So let me just again clarify. So my understanding is that the Historical Society gets funded out of this fund, but they don't apply for the grant application process. So what you're asking is, if we have a cap of $70,000, that $20,000, even though it gets funded out of this fund, is not included in that amount. So
yeah,
if the cap was 70, it would really be 90, including the Historical Society.
Yeah, otherwise we will go and put 10 communities to assuming that we have 70K. But oh, no, 70K is given to you, but 20K is going, it's a fixed, not for you, kind of. It looks as, okay, what do we operate under? So actually we are operating only on 50K, not the 70K. So that's the thing, it'll help us. That's a fixed one, then let's remove it. Let's not, because it anyway is going to get funded by the council anyway. Then we want to have only those things which are available for us to fund. Commissioner
Zach, did you want to hop in?
Yeah, sorry, Commissioner. So one thing. So Commissioner Stanek has one question, I think.
So I guess I'm confused, because I hear some people saying they don't like the 70K, some people saying they do, and I feel like we should take a vote if we want that to be it. I mean, the 70K to me, the last 2 years when this process came through Parks and Rec, the commission, not including Historical Society, it was more along the lines of 90,000. So I understand that we're in a COVID year, and I don't want us setting a base amount based on an extraordinary year. And I feel like we may want to keep it, and council's direction may be for next year, because we have a big budget gap, that it may be 50 or 70 next year. But I'm very concerned that we're setting the floor there, or the ceiling there, in this very extraordinary year.
Sure.
The only thing I'll add.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Jen.
No, I want to provide some updated figures. So when we were talking about, again, going back to that 70,000, that was derived from a 5-year average that did in fact include Historical Society. When we exclude that, the 5-year average would become 66,000. and the 3-year average would be 79,000. So a little bit closer to years past. Excluding Historical Society, when that decision was made in 2019-20, community funding in the last 3 years was at 52,000, 90,000, and 95,000.
Okay. Commissioner Tambe, please go ahead.
Yeah.
So I was, Commissioner Stanek, I think that Commissioner Mina was okay with the 70,000. Commissioner Beggar and I were like, no, we want one that's whatever money we actually have to spend to like use that number as it shows up cyclically. You would like a scale, some sort of sliding scale if we can't get that actual number from City Council before. And then Chair, I wasn't able to.
Yeah, that's my question too. So what do you think, maybe Commissioner Stanek, you can explain, what is that we can vote on now? I thought these are all recommendations given back to them, but I'm not sure which one we will vote, which will have an weigh in, because at the end of the day, I think Park and Rec Department and John will come and say, that's all the money I have, and that's all it is. So I'm not sure what is that we can ask for or we can vote.
Yeah,
which will have an impact.
What I heard Commissioner Begor and Tambe say is they'd like a number coming from the council. And I agree with that 100%. What I heard the director say is, given the timing, that's probably not practical. And we're probably not going to be able to get that. So given that, I didn't want us just defaulting to the 70,000 number. I mean, when you say average, so there's averages of mean, median, and mode. If you look at the mode, it's more like 90,000 because that's the one that we had 2 out of the last 3 years. I think 5 years ago is, that's a lifetime ago. So I appreciate our finance manager, very fiscally responsible. And so I appreciate your thoughts on that, but I really think the more recent past is where the city and the council has said they want to really support our residents on this. And this next year may be a very different year. So I don't know if with this recommendation we can go to council and ask them. We could have a motion. I could make a motion to, change the date, move it up. And I guess I don't know if you want a motion to not have the restriction on the fee waivers.
So maybe Dr. Joanne was about to say something before on the motion. Sorry, Commissioner Stanek. So Dr. Joanne, please go ahead. I think what do you want is that action here, recommended action. What is that exactly needed?
So there is no motion that's needed. It's just to provide feedback, and I'm taking all the notes, and I think that all the staff are taking all the notes, and I think we've got just about everything. The only thing I think we're hung up on is the funding cap potentially. The unique opportunity we have this year is we're bringing this item to council so they can give us guidance on what amount they want for this year. But we would have to agendize this every year to get the range at the same time, which is not impossible, but again, administratively not optimal. So I'm not sure if you all are comfortable with $70,000 to $90,000 range instead of saying a cap, because I don't really think it's a cap. I think that's maybe the wrong word. Word choice was poor. A $70,000 to $90,000 range. And then of course, council will give us their feedback on that, whether they think that's appropriate, too little, too much, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and again, when you say 70 to 90, assuming that is 50 to 70, if you remove the Historical Society offer.
My point.
I just wanted to make sure that
it's not always,
So great. So I think maybe it'll be good to have that, Dr. Joanne, in the next, when is it going to the council, this particular one?
We are supposed to bring this to council December 1st in order to be able to make the applications available early January for people to submit by February 1st. So I apologize, I lost sight of the timeline just by a hair. So this is all my fault. You can blame me.
Come on, who else?
No.
No.
We love special meetings. I would love another one for our strategic plan. So don't worry about bringing us back for these.
Yeah. The only
A lot
other,
in your future, a lot.
yeah, the only other, sort of unfortunate thing is that December 1st is that's a date before the new council is seated. Is that right? And so you're going to have two council members who are on their way out the door, and the two new council members who are going to have to be implementing this along with the three continuing will not have any input to it. But I understand the issue of timing. It's, once you get into December, everybody goes in different ways.
Well, and I don't think this is the last we've seen of the community grant funding policy. So get excited. We'll be back at it next year.
Yeah, that'll be good because we are meeting on December
Yeah.
a little later too, not on December 1st, right? On December 5th, or I forgot the date. So
Right.
7th. Okay,
7th.
December 7th. Then I think we will have an update by then. Is it we getting a 50 to 70 or?
Woohoo, we're good. We're done.
Yeah, we will get
No,
a lot.
that's great. Joanne, I think that you really captured what I was trying to say in probably too many words.
You guys do a fantastic job. I think
Yeah,
we've got it.
Yeah, Dr. Joanne and Rachel and Jack and I think Tony was here. So all of them, they have a long list of notes now. Each one is running into 2 pages. That's great. Thank you. I think all commissioners, you see, exactly 2 pages. That's good. That means that we feel good that we have really given enough input. We feel good about it on the special meeting, especially. Thank you. If there is no other questions, and I wanted to go and quickly wrap it up and say new business. I don't see anything. That's good. It's a special meeting, so I don't want to have any new business in that too. That's good. And then staff and commission reports. Is there anything we do have to? No, right? Thank you. See, everybody is ready to. No, I'm going to introduce something. No, I'm just kidding. It's awesome. Thank you. I think especially thank for the staff to be here, and especially Rachel, Jack, and Tony to be here, and of course Dr. Joanne. This is an important one for helping for the community, and we actively debating all of those things. You see, is a passionate from commissioners every time to really, hey, we want to give more to the community. It's not that, right? So it really helps, and putting all thought together. Appreciate it. Okay, with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 7:42 p.m., the earliest ever.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Woohoo, thank you. Bye.